All right. Good early afternoon to all of you for one of Nexus for Change's high impact webinars. Theo Stiegler here in my home office today. Thank you for joining us. We are going to look at some of your first steps in going remote real fast. The idea is not for me to sit here and lecture you all as to what I think the best way is for you to all do that, but rather to sort of leverage the experience from the group, and then also give you an opportunity to really hone in on some specific questions that you might be bringing this morning. During this kind of new challenge and situation, we were talking a little bit ahead of the recording starting that I think it is meaningful and reasonable for us to look at this not as social distancing, but rather physical distancing that can actually give us some opportunities for social connection, maybe different from what we're used to, but I think it's still important that we think of it that way. So the premise sort of for this particular session this morning is, what if your 9 to 5 was now suddenly online and all you had was your laptop or your iPad? I think that the steps that we are all sort of wrestling through is to identify what are the platforms, what are the tools for virtual engagement that we are in need of to facilitate this new reality. And then how do we quickly learn those tools to start to actually work and collaborate virtually? Deciding on the platforms that you use, I think there's a couple of different considerations that we need to be aware of. Obviously, we are here on the Zoom platform this morning. One question is, what devices are available and will you use primarily? Zoom is very good in terms of it's available cross-platform. It doesn't matter what your operating system is. You can use it on the phone, you can use it on a tablet, you can use it on a desktop or laptop computer. So that's pretty wide open. There are other tools that have done a good job in being available on a multitude of platforms. But deciding on what your primary device is for engagement is one thing to track off, or to keep track of rather. What kind of tools are you going to need? Are you primarily going to be working in a video conferencing environment? Are you primarily working in a learning management system? Maybe if you're a student or a faculty and you're looking for this engagement to be around learning, there are some LMS learning management platforms that have built-in options for video tools. There are other ones that don't, so you may want to create a combination of those. A third thing to track of is the main audience, let's say, that you're engaging with, whether that's your employer, your university, or the folks that you would typically have regular contact with. What tools and devices are they using? And finally, if you're already using a set of tools, what are you most comfortable with? Maybe if there's an option for you to introduce a new tool set to the folks that you're engaging, if there's one that you're already comfortable with, obviously that would be one to consider. In having done a lot of virtual work over the last, I want to say 5 to 6 years myself, and Nexus for Change within our organization sort of for the last 12 to 15 years, the tools that we've settled on because of a combination of ease and just sort of applicability and flexibility across different platforms are Zoom that we're on, and then Google Docs as the virtual collaboration form for documents, for spreadsheets, for slideshows, and so forth. Again, that's not supposed to be a promotional, but has simply been sort of the other side of our work has established that those are the tools that we're most comfortable with. Learning the tools, there's quite a bit going on at the moment. Peggy is here from us, and here with us rather, through Extension, and they have a whole list of suggestions and portals and tools that I've seen both through eXtension Foundation, but also through some of the institutions. I had an email chain that I was part of from the University of Wisconsin Extension that had specific offerings. And just like Nexus for Change, a lot of folks that are putting out these sessions are making them available to whoever wants to join. I'm finding that of the invitations that I've gotten, about 75% or so were open to the public. Hey, if you know somebody that might benefit, feel free to invite them and have them join us as well. Just in terms of what some of the market leading availability is that you might want to be aware of, I've mentioned video conference communication platforms. Zoom is the one that we're on currently. GoToMeeting is another market leader that's quite well established. There is WebEx. There is an offering by Adobe. There are several other ones. Zoom was one of the first to leverage breakout rooms, which I want to trial with you here in a minute. That's one of the reasons that we have shifted to them a couple of years ago. We used to use GoToMeeting quite routinely and still sometimes do. But Zoom was sort of on the leading edge of enabling breakout rooms where you can take an online session of, let's say, 50 or more and break them down into smaller groups, which I think in this new reality that we're in is critically important to allow people to have individual voices be heard. Online sessions with large groups can be just as detrimentally boring as the last meeting that you sat in where somebody read a report to you that you felt like, why am I here? Somebody could have sent me an email to the same end. So it's my intention, and hopefully share that experience with you here this morning, to really make sure that we engage one another on a level where a group of sometimes just 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 can get together as part of the larger engagement to make meaningful progress and to exchange around what might be a meaningful challenge or question. So the tools that are out there for project management and teamwork, there's Slack, Trello, Asana, and Monday are some of them. Google Docs, I mentioned. Microsoft has an offering where they're putting their Office suite into what they call Microsoft Teams. That actually includes some video communication and one-to-one communication also. And then I mentioned the learning management systems. The three that come to mind for me are Moodle, Canvas, and Blackboard, that would be more appropriate for learning management environments for some situations. So using breakout rooms to me is a critical piece of how we need to use this technology. Now there's a group of 6 of us, so it certainly makes sense in this session, and we'll do that here in a moment, to just open up the microphones and talk to one another. But I want to increase your comfort level with, if you are all on Zoom, you have access to this. Depending on whether you are on a paid or free account, the only limitation to sort of the core functionality of Zoom is that if you are a meeting creator on a free account, Zoom cuts you off at 40 minutes. So you'll get a little message that says your meeting is going to time out. I think it gives you a 5-minute warning. But the maybe not quite elegant, but the workaround is that you can warn people, hey, our meeting's going to time out. And you can literally go back to that same meeting link that you've used and go for another 40 minutes if you have more need to have the conversation. In your settings in Zoom, you can enable breakout rooms, and that is available to you in the free account. You can have meetings with up to 100 participants. Although I heard of a situation yesterday where somebody ran into a bandwidth limit, and for some reason the meeting was cut off at 25 individuals. I do believe that likely was just an outcome of the increased bandwidth that Zoom is trying to manage at the moment, rather than a new stipulation, because I've actually heard conversation that Zoom was thinking about extending that 40-minute limit in the times that we're currently in. But so what I'd like to do, the process of how breakout rooms work is you will have, as a participant, a screen come up that says the host is inviting you. You can see a little picture here in the top right corner of my share screen. The host is inviting you into a breakout room, and I'm going to ask you to click the Join Breakout Room button. That will put you in a room with one of the rest of us. And I want to do 2 rounds. The first round is what tool, if you knew how to use it right now, would make you more confident that you're prepared to what's coming with the response to COVID-19. And then we'll come back and talk about that for a minute. And then the second round is going to be, what expertise do you have that you think could help someone in this crisis? So I want to have those 2 conversations just in pairs, and then we'll bring those back to the group. Again, once I enable those breakout rooms, you'll see a little screen that will tell you join breakout room 1, join breakout room 3. It'll have a number. On my end as the facilitator, in my menu options, you all should have on the bottom of your screen where you either see me talking or see us as a group. On the very left, your left here, a microphone. If you click that microphone, you can unmute yourself. There's a down arrow or up arrow, depending on your settings next to that, that gives you access to audio settings. You can select maybe a different microphone if you have an additional microphone set up. Next to that, you have the stop video or like a, it's like a projector or a camera icon that turns your video off. I just clicked mine, so you either see a frozen image of me or sometimes a picture that I preloaded. Again, sometimes with bandwidth issues, it can be beneficial if your audio is challenged, if you get feedback from your audience, like, hey, you're breaking up, turning the video off can improve your audio. And then also down here, you should be able to see a share option, like a screen with an arrow coming out of it, green rectangle. Currently my screen is shared, so you wouldn't be able to share yours, but that's an option for meetings. If you're looking at a document together or you're looking at a slideshow together, that is the tool that you want to use. And I, on my end, also have the breakout room option enabled. So I'm going to go there, and Zoom doesn't share that on, even if I have that on the screen that I'm sharing with you, Zoom doesn't share that overlay because they're saying, well, that's for you, the facilitator, to manage. The participants don't need to see that. It gives me options to either sort you into groups automatically, so Zoom will just like pair you up. If I select that there should be 2 individuals in the group, or I can manually create groups. So I can say I want to pair Renee with Carol and I want to pair Peggy with Tara. I can manually create those groups if I need to do so. In group creation, it will initially take, in this case, me, the facilitator, out of those groups. So it'll assume that I don't want to join a group, because Zoom has options to go in and out of the breakout rooms and join folks and maybe give supports. So let's say if we're a session of 50 individuals, I could create breakout rooms with 4 of you, 5 of you each, and then I could go from one room to another and either offer assistance or, hey, we're at this point in the conversation. I have been part of engagements that were online conferences that used the Zoom platform, where you had a total of almost, I think I would say 180 or so individuals that were part of those conversations. And so the breakout rooms were 20 folks, where each breakout room had its own facilitator and manager of that particular breakout. And then the meeting host could go in and out of those and offer support. So with all that, I'm going to click on create breakout rooms, and each of you will be partnered with one other person, and I'll join whoever Zoom assigns to a breakout room of 1. And I'll see you there in a minute. Again, click on join breakout room. We'll do about 2 minutes. I'm actually, for this kind of engagement, I have a stopwatch that I set, because what happens is that once I select close the breakout room, Zoom will actually give you a 60-second window before that room closes and you come back to the main session. So for a 2-minute engagement, I have a stopwatch that I hit when I send you to the breakout rooms. I wait for 1 minute, then I close the rooms, which sends all of you a notice, hey, your breakout room is closing in 60 seconds. So that gives us a total of 2 minutes. I encourage you to sort of use those 2 minutes in one person goes first and shares your response to, again, what tool, if you know how to use it right now, would sort of make you more confident that you're ready for what's coming. And then when you get that notice, hey, your room will close in 60 seconds, that would also be your signal, if you haven't already gone back and forth for the other person to share. So here we go. Hi, Jolene, can you hear me?
Gotta unmute, Teo. Can't hear you.
Yes, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, so these are some interesting little feature sets. Like, you can actually, in your Zoom settings, enable whether or not when you return from a breakout room, whether you'll come back and be unmuted or muted.
Okay.
Zoom is pretty fancy with the options that you can enable. So how was that experience? It took a little longer to get to the rooms than it typically does. I guess, again, that is an issue with the bandwidth that Zoom is managing this morning. What are some highlights or surprises that you might want to share from your conversations? Everybody had a conversation partner, yes? That all worked?
Mm-hmm.
Thumbs up? Okay, good. Or a nod is great. Excellent. Thank you. So who wants to share maybe a surprise or an insight or a...
Okay, I'll
Well, I
go.
can,
Tara,
our
go ahead.
partners, we were going to talk over each other.
Please, you go, Tara. I'd much
Oh,
rather
I was going to
you
say
do.
I appreciated Carol's insight. You know, she listened from me because I'm more inexperienced than she is, and she kind of narrowed it down that I had more experience in creating some content, but the tools that I am not as comfortable with is presenting within Zoom other than just a conference call. So she suggested maybe partnering with someone that has the other skill set, and we can collaborate together.
Excellent. I'm going to listen. I have a couple of suggestions and responses. I'll share those in a second. But I want to sort of harvest some of their thinking first. Peggy, looked like you were saying something.
Well, what I learned from that is we have very different needs.
Yeah.
Lots of different needs and experience. Our county regional specialist is over like, I don't know, she has like 28 people. So we use these more for communication. That's basically what we have used them for. So she can get our whole region together. So I have very little experience. And I'm not sure how I can incorporate it in the remote teaching. As I was telling her, maybe more to the partners that I partner with to keep them excited. So when I come back, I have a class.
Gotcha. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think the idea that because I run meetings with like 30 people, the idea that I can set up pre-program it so that every time I want to have a meeting with these 30 people, I can do it more easily.
Yeah, so Jolene, I think you were saying that to have sort of a templated setup that you can run for meetings with up to 30, one of the things you'll need to figure out is to get your microphone a little hotter so folks can hear more easily. But I will take here a minute in a little bit and walk us through creating a Zoom meeting and some of the options that are available to you for doing so. Specifically also with your challenge that you're looking at right now, I'm going to, no, that doesn't show up on my share screen. I was going to say I'll share my screen and show you, but next to your microphone is, should be an up arrow or down arrow depending on your settings. And there is one option toward the bottom that says test speaker and microphone. And I invite you all to check that out. So you should have on the top, it should give you an option to select a microphone, and it might have something like built-in or same as system. Then next should be an option to select what speaker you're using. And again, it'll probably give you like a built-in, or if you have a different device connected, it might say headphones or built-in outputs, things like that. And then in the panel underneath that, it has, should have test speaker and microphone, switch to phone audio, and leave computer audio, and potentially specific to your machine, some other settings. But that test speaker and microphone option is helpful to determine some of the volume levels and things that you might want to hunt down. And that's available. Let's say you have scheduled a session for 1 o'clock. You could go into the session at 12:45 or so and check that all out and make sure it's working, and then come back to it.
Okay.
So I recommend that. One of the suggestions, Tara, for you in terms of presenting, do you use PowerPoint or Google Slides? Do you have a preference in terms of what you might use for visuals for a session?
I've used PowerPoint.
Okay. So
And sometimes
what I would recommend for that is that you use a multiple screen setup to manage a presentation where you're actually trying to share content, but then also engage in a video conference. To me is really, really challenging just on one screen, especially if it's a laptop screen. Most of us have a flat screen TV at home, and most newer laptops have an HDMI out. So you can take a regular HDMI cable, same cable that connects like to the cable box, and connect your TV as a separate monitor to the laptop. And then what I do is on my laptop screen, which is sort of below where my hands are right now on my front, is where I put the share screen with the slides on PowerPoint. Then Zoom lets me select which screen I want to share. So I select the screen with the PowerPoint on it to share with you all. I'm going to do that right now, and you've seen that before. So I have Zoom gives me an option, which screen do you want to share? I select desktop 1, which is my primary screen, and you should all now see my let's try it from a Google slideshow. And then I can still on my second screen look at all of your beautiful faces. I can potentially pull up the chat to see if somebody is sharing something there in the background that needs additional information or insight. I can also pull up a panel that helps me manage participants, but that's really difficult to do on one crowded screen. So I really benefit from having that dual screen setup. And again, your TV is a good trial place where you don't have to go and buy something separate. Just sit yourself in front of the TV and check that out to do the share option on Zoom. Yes, Carol?
It would be helpful to know, you said very off the cuff, my primary screen is what I'm sharing with you now. Which is primary and which is secondary in the context of the TV versus the computer?
It's totally up to you. For me, because my laptop screen is much smaller than my secondary screen, which I suggest could be your flat screen TV, my primary screen in terms of sharing my screen is my laptop screen. Because that's real estate that's right in front of me, that's smaller, that now you can look at it, I can control what's on that screen. I can drag and drop things from my laptop screen to that, let's say it's your TV, to that screen. I'm looking at you all, the video feed with your faces on my secondary screen, which I'm suggesting would be the TV screen. You might think of it the other way around. You might think of it as the secondary screen, the one that you're using to share the slideshow. Just my nomenclature. I'm not necessarily saying that that's how you have to think of it. But my suggestion is that you use the smaller screen real estate for the sharing screen that you can then decide what you want participants to see, and the larger screen to manage the video that you have from other folks and maybe chat or maybe the panels for participants. I'm going to next open a new tab here on my, this happens to be Google Chrome that I use. And I'm going to go to Zoom and show you how to create a new meeting. Given that you are here on a Zoom session, all of you will have a Zoom account. If you go literally to zoom.us, that's one too many O's, Delteo, zoom.us. If you are already logged in, it'll give you the My Account option here on the top right corner. If not, it'll give you a sign-in option. I tend to recommend that folks use either their Google or their Facebook, which are two easy ways that Zoom will recognize and allow you to create an account that uses those check-in options. If you have an existing Gmail or Google account or a Facebook account, then you don't have to keep track of a separate password. But in my case, it's Google. I'm already signed in, so I click on My Account. And in that My Account overview on the left, so for you guys that's over here, I think, you can see profile, meetings, webinars, which I currently don't utilize because those are meetings of 100 or more in the Zoom environment, recordings that I have created, and then settings down here. If I were to, and Jolene spoke that this would help her out, if I wanted to create a new meeting, I would select the Meetings tab here. And then it lists the meetings that I have scheduled. You can see here upcoming meetings. I can look at meetings that I've already held under previous meetings. I can access my personal meeting rooms, and I actually set up a couple of templates. Jolene, that's one of the things that I think you asked about. If I have the same kind of meeting, let's say with my master gardeners, once you've created a meeting and created some parameters, you could, and I'll show you in a second, save that as a template, and then the next time create a meeting using that template rather than adding all the information a second time. So I'm going to use this schedule a new meeting option right here. I'm going to title my meeting and call the topic maybe, for these intents and purposes, test meeting. You can enter a description here. That description can be as brief or as lengthy as you want it to be. You can see here this bottom right corner, I can drag and open up and enter 5 paragraphs of text if I want to, or just have one line that says, hey team so-and-so, we're meeting tomorrow at 2. If I have a template already established, which again, most of you probably will not have pre-existing templates, you can go in here and select those templates and it'll preload some of the content. You then would select your date. Let's say we're meeting for this test meeting on Friday. Mine happens to be set for 24-hour military time because I'm originally from Germany, and that just clicks better for my brain. So we're going to meet tomorrow at 4 p.m., which is 1600 hours. I can set the duration here. Let's say it's only supposed to be a 15-minute meeting. The time zone for that 1600 hours is important. Mine is set to Eastern. If this is a recurring meeting, like for example, Carol and I have a standing meeting every Wednesday morning at 10:30, rather than recreating that meeting, I can click recurring meeting here and it'll give me options. Is this a daily meeting? Is it a weekly meeting? If it's a weekly meeting, I can actually also have it on multiple days. Like let's say we meet on Monday and Friday is an option here. But let's say that for right now, this is not a recurring meeting. I can make you all register. The way that you got here today is that you got an email or a link and you clicked on it and it asked you for your name and your email and then asked you to confirm your email. That way you were registered for the meeting and I can send you the follow-up and I have your email to do so. So you may want to require this registration. Meeting ID, I always set to generate automatically. That's just a numerical that Zoom assigns. You can require a meeting password. If you have super secret meetings that you don't want somebody to go into and steal all your intellectual property from you, you may choose to have a meeting password required. Video is simply when people come into the session as a host. I tend to want my video to be on. I encourage you to have yours on, but this is for you to select how you want. You can limit a session to only be accessible via phone for the audio. That to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I always have both enabled, so people have the option. And then finally for the meeting options, you all, when you first joined the meeting, were in a waiting room for a minute until I clicked you into the session. That is helpful for me if, for example, Carol and I are co-presenting and I want to touch base with her real quick on, hey, do you share the slides? Do I share the slides? I can do that while you guys are in the waiting room. Then once Carol and I are clear, I can invite everybody in from the waiting room. You may, especially for larger groups, you may select to mute participants on entry so that you don't have somebody joining the meeting. Let's say it's already ongoing and you're trying to record it for those that were not able to participate, and suddenly somebody comes in and doesn't realize that their child is still in the background and you have all this noise on the recording. So I have that enabled, tend to have that enabled. So once you've created all these settings, real check, anybody want me to go back over something that wasn't clear in that? Okay, so I hit save on the bottom and now this test meeting is created and there's an ID. I can add it to my Google Calendar. I can add it to Outlook or Yahoo with just a simple one click. If you do that once, it will ask you to, hey, do you really want to give Zoom these privileges to access your Google Calendar and create an entry? Same for Outlook. The thing I want to point out to you, since we have a meeting that I asked you to register for, I can look at the email settings and what the emails look like that go out to you as the participants when you register. I can create branding. So Jolene, if you're saying you have a nice little logo for your Master Gardeners, you could add that here. And so when the invitation goes out, you would select this image here and add it. When the invitation goes out to folks, they see the Master Gardener logo at the top or on the side banner or logo that you can add that sort of allows your email to look familiar to those folks.
Teo, where was that?
That is once you have saved the meeting, you can look at, I'm looking at this test meeting that I've just created, and toward the bottom here is registration. So that shows me if people are registered and how many. Then email settings that allow me to control the email that you receive once you've registered. Hey, you're invited, this is the information. And then here's the branding.
Okay, so that's all tied to the option of having people register for the meeting.
Correct. If you don't have a registration required, then there is no email to brand, if you will. So that option is not there.
Okay, I've never used it.
What's nice that is always available, but to me is easier with registered meeting, is you can create a poll. So for today, it may have been, I could have created a poll that says, hey, you're all here to learn about virtual engagements. What's your experience level with Zoom? And, you know, I know a little bit, I know a lot, or somewhere in between, and I could start a meeting with a poll like that to sort of get a lay of the land of who's participating. You know, I'm thinking again, Jolene, you asked a question about setting these up. Maybe it's a question around how often, since we're not able to be together out in the dirt and actually garden together as a unit, how often do you guys want to meet online? You might create a poll for that and give people the ability with one click to say, I want to meet once a week, once a month. Things of those nature are really nice and easy built-in options here in Zoom. Did that help, Jolene?
Yeah. Is there a place?
Is there a place for what? You just went on mute there.
I'm sorry. Let's see.
Is there a place for what? Keeps muting you.
Okay, am I there?
You are there.
Okay. Excuse me, because I have 30 master gardeners and we meet on the same day of each month,
Uh-huh.
can I do like a directory so it sends it out to everybody instead of having them register?
Absolutely, but that's something then that you would have to control in terms of setting up in your email. You know, here are the same 30 people. I have this group mailer. You would simply copy paste this registration URL right here.
Okay.
And you would drop that in an email, or you click down here, copy the invitation, and then you, oh, you don't even have to highlight it. You just click on copy the invitation and go to your email and paste the invitation and it'll send it out.
Okay.
But you would have to keep track of who it is sent to.
All right.
When I do these, the way that I do it is I create social media posts, I do emails and stuff, and I take this registration URL and I'll write a little email that says, hey, you know, here's the challenge, here's the invitation, please go register at this URL, and I drop the URL in that email and that social media post for folks to click and then register.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's do our second round of breakout rooms. And the invitation again right now is to talk about what expertise might you have that could help somebody in this crisis. Not necessarily expertise for one another in this room, but just in general, very intentionally, what gives you hope? What are some of the things that you can maybe contribute? So here we go for another set of breakout rooms. And I'm actually gonna see if I can sort you with somebody else this time. There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Peggy.
Hi. So what crisis are we talking about? The COVID?
That's sort of the obvious one, but if you have another one you're facing, there's people with more than one crisis going on.
No, my biggest crisis is changing to a remote working. Yeah. But the crisis, one, I have a nursing background, so I have some knowledge and some of that, even though this is new.
Yeah.
But and I know how to socially work with people, so
good.
You have some things I could do to help, but I don't think they really want us doing a lot of that with the social distancing.
Right. Yeah, I really want to be part of talking, and not talking about social distancing, but talking about physical distancing and actually social connecting. I think it's, I guess that is what I see as my expertise is.
And that is a new term, and I like that term.
Yeah, I really want to go after how can we still create environments for synergy? What are, with these virtual tools, what are the things that we can do to encourage one another to still be socially connected? Not socially distant. Yes, we have to be physically distant. I shouldn't be able to sneeze and you get any droplets on you. But that doesn't mean that we can't collaborate. And so how do we do that? Is what I think my expertise and hope is, that we can leverage that for one
another. I want to, what I would like to do, and it's been suggested, is doing like some YouTube trainings and stuff for my group, and then putting them off across through some kind of Zoom or something to my participants.
So one of the things that you could do is, have a Zoom session, record it, and then post that recording to YouTube.
So could you actually do a class that way?
Absolutely.
Show a cooking demonstration?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And if you'd like, send me an email. We can talk a little bit more about how you might set that up in terms of, you know, what devices and that kind of thing. But absolutely, that's what we use routinely. Like the session that I'm recording right now, part of it is to write up a blog post that sort of highlights some of our learning together, include this video as a recording, and it'll be on YouTube, pending how quickly the servers allow me to work today.
So the Zoom could then go to a YouTube.
Yep. All right, welcome back. Okay, how was that? You feel good about some expertise that you all have?
I learned something.
Good. So I'm gonna sort of as a follow-up and to give you a little bit more detail. Some of you have asked specifically about, you know, what are some of the ways that I can be more confident? What are the tools? I'm putting a link into the chat for you. The chat is another great tool for Zoom. You can almost have a parallel conversation with larger groups. Maybe you have somebody who is doing a presentation style thing and you don't want to interrupt them, you don't want to unmute, but you have a question or you want to keep track of something that you were thinking right when they said such and such. The chat is a great way to keep track of that. In your sort of that option bar on the bottom that has the microphone and the camera, there should be a little speech bubble with 3 dots in it. Chat, if you click on that, I have shared with you a link from Zoom's blog, which gives you sort of some of the high level things that you might want to use in terms of getting the right Zoom pieces downloaded as you're sharing that maybe with coworkers or audience that you're reaching out to. It talks you through some of the basics of setup. So Jolene, for you, for the microphone, where to find those things that might be helpful. It talks about creating meetings, what backgrounds to use, some tips and tricks like in Zoom, if you hold down on the space bar, depending on whether you're not, you have to enable that, excuse me, that sort of, in music and sound recording where I spent some time, we call it a cough button. So if you have to cough and you don't want to quickly find your Zoom button, you can actually enable your space bar to hold it down, do your little cough, and then get off the space bar, and the rest of us didn't have to hear you cough or sneeze. So the link that I'm sending you has some of those details that hopefully will, if nothing else, give you another resource to learn a little bit more. But what were some of the expertise that you all talked about?
Well, I was partnered with the other Wallace,
Cool.
Jolene, and she is an amazing listener. One of her gifts and expertise is that she's empathetic and non-judgmental, and so people like to talk to her because they can trust her and they can feel safe because they can come and say what they need to say, and she's that empathetic, you know, listener for them. So that was pretty cool.
Jolene, how much do you charge an hour? I might need your.
I always thought at some point I was going to be a dial-a-mom.
Okay.
Start my own dial-a-mom business, but too late for that.
Never too late.
Yeah, I guess.
Never too late.
In these times, it might be enormously valuable.
Absolutely.
I think you're
with
right.
all these mothers home with school-age children, particularly.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else?
So I'll offer what I got from several of the events that I've been on. We've been told to socially distance, and instead of socially distance, we need to physically distance and socially connect. And Teo is doing an amazing job with his gifts to help us do the connecting part.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so this is certainly an ongoing offer for you. If, as you sort of digest what we talked about today, we're about 2 minutes over, so I want to honor the time commitment that you guys are making. If there are questions that come up for you, please feel free to reach out. Go to nexusforchange.com. I'm going to do a little bit of shameless promotion here and share my screen. If you go to nexusforchange.com, You can see our blog that has other meetings that we're offering, other webinars that we're offering. It has a lot of resources. You can go to events and see more webinars. Go to the blog. The session today I will send you a follow-up email on, but I will create a blog post that's sort of at a high level, reviews what we talked about, to share that with others. There's other blog posts that share similar and related content that I invite you to view. But please don't also be afraid to send a personal email and reach out for support if there's something that I specifically can help you with or point you in the direction of somebody that can. We are happy to do that. And so thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon, and stay healthy, but stay socially connected rather than distant.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
wonderful
you.
rest of your day.
Thank you.